back over the 25 years that I've been a part of this school, I've seen a lot of changes, as you can imagine, and the first few years we were all learning and growing together and just really seeking to know what God had in mind for the future of the school.
It's hard to realize how this ministry has been blessed when you can't go back and see, you know, an 8th grade classroom and a crowded library of a church, and art in a kitchen of a church, and how He has brought us through that. The people need it. I wish people could see, you know, from where we have come and what God has done.
It was a wonderful time. We were like a small family, much as we are today, and we all loved one another.
And always the memories come back to the children and the students that I've had.
You can't work with boys and girls and not have a heart moment.
And that's what I find here, is the family atmosphere. That we have youngsters we have watched from being born all the way up to, in some cases, some of their funerals.
In giving tours of our building, I always wish that I could take the parents back to the beginning so they could see how God has blessed this ministry. I think that's one of the privileges of having been with the ministry for 21 years. You can see God's hands in that ministry because He honored the prayers of the school board and the administration. They would go to them humbly. They would go to Christ humbly in prayer when there were decisions to be made, and He blessed us so.
One gentleman in particular came in one day. I was on the phone, and I put the phone down, and he had pulled a chair up right in front of my desk and said, "Okay, I have some questions." And this gentleman was fairly large and intimidating, not real friendly. So for the next hour and 15 minutes, I proceeded to answer as best I could all of his questions. And then he introduced himself, and it was Mike Teeters. Many of you know Mike Teeters, who is now teaching in our junior high here in this building. But Mike was at that time on the school board of another school district and was looking for a Christian school to put his children in. And as we finished, we smiled and became friends, shook hands, and I think then Gary took him a tour around the building. But eventually Mike ended up enrolling all 3 of his children, Aaron, Micah, and Rhonda, in Troy Christian Schools, and we became good friends. Our families became friends, and at some point Mike became got on the school board and served on our school board and as president for many years.
Being a part of the school for the last 23 years, it's just unbelievably amazing at how God has worked here at Troy Christian. It's I think about the days years ago in the school board when we first started. There were days when we would have a board meeting or even call a special board meeting, and Gary would tell us that we didn't have enough money to make payroll, so we'd have to pass the hat in the board meeting in order to collect money. And it's just amazing how God's grace worked there, and we would always manage to have the money that was needed.
The room that I had was long and skinny, and as I grew, they had movable walls. So the walls would move. As we grew, the walls opened up, and the room kept getting longer, and it was still skinny, but it kept getting longer. And we had a lot of fun in those days. We had an air conditioning unit and heating unit in the wall, and every time that it would come on, it would sound like an airplane. So we called them our airplanes. And every time the airplanes took off or landed, then I would either yell or not have to yell, depending on whether the air conditioning units were on or not. So the kids and I had a lot of fun with that, and it was just something we worked around, one of those things.
I was in 5 different classrooms in 5 years. But the most important thing, the rooms may have changed, but our love and our hearts for children was always the same.
I would take the students to Wright State to the chemistry show, and one year, for some reason, when we called, there was no room for us. So I had gone several times, and I thought, well, I can do some of these experiments here that they do in addition to what I usually do with chemistry. And one was they soaked a towel in alcohol and hung it over a post. They would shut the lights out, and of course you would light the alcohol would burn off, and the towel would be just fine. So I decided that I would do that. It was the first year that we were in the new elementary building. I had lamps hanging from the ceiling. Went over, soaked my towel, turned out the lights, lit that, and those flames went clear up to the ceiling. The lamb fell off, the kids went ooh, and I grabbed the towel and threw it into the sink. I decided I was not going to do that experiment in my room anymore.
And then the third year I came, so I've been here for 23 years, and I came straight to junior high. What an experience that was. I had 36 youngsters in my class before, and then I jumped to 11. It was marvelous. The first week I went out in the hallway, and several children were talking. When I came into the classroom, I said, now, if anyone was talking, you need to put your name on the board. All the children went up and put their name on the board. And I said, you couldn't all have been talking. Well, not now, but I did talk yesterday, Mrs. Nichols. And that broke my heart, and I realized that the Lord really were in these youngsters, and this is where He wanted me.
Gary came to me one day and he said, Sally, we need a bus driver. I've never driven anything bigger than a station wagon. And parents to this day still come to me and tell me all these stories that these children had for the bus rides with Mrs. Schaefer.
My wife and I were saving money for a down payment on our house, and we were buying, it was when we were buying the McKeag building, and we had the money saved, we had the plans in the drawer to build our new house, and it was amazing to me how, you know, I came home one day and my wife said, I think we need to give that down payment money to Troy Christian School to buy that building. And I looked at her and said, but honey, that's our house. And she said, yeah, but look how much better God will use that money than if we keep it. And that was just a tremendous blessing to me, and it just ended up being that the money that we gave was just the right amount of money so we could get the down payment money that we needed for the McKeag building. The miracle behind that was that the next 1 year later, we had the same amount of money back in our bank account.
We had chapel in the morning, and at lunch the kids were still in tears. We had chapel in the afternoon. And then the next day we had chapel almost all day.
Mm-hmm.
And there were so many lives changed, and those youngsters really bonded.
Yes.
And at the end of those 4 days, we as teachers got together after school and decided we had to do something. And the big equipment was still all here. We were all out in this field with dirt
Mm-hmm.
and piles and mud, and there was a big rock. And Dan Bray got the workmen to bring that rock around. Remember, on the back of that.
So it was right in front.
Right in front.
Right by the door.
And we decided that as teachers we had to put our faith on the rock and not on our abilities or on which youngsters were going to gel. And we all went out, and every child who wanted to put their name on the rock wrote with that paint pen.
Paint pens. We went out and bought paint pens, right?
And we wrote our name on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that rock is still out in front of Troy Christian High School today.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing how precious the school and its growth and the family atmosphere that we've had here has been to me, it's just been a real blessing to my family too, and continues to be.
It's just so amazing how God has worked and what Troy Christian has meant to me and my family.
I don't think you ever really forget the people who love you, and they remember us and they come back to us, and that's such a joy.
What can you say? It's an awesome place, an awesome school, an awesome family.
I know that as long as the people stay in the Word and in His will, we will be blessed.
We can only say thank you, Lord, and God bless you.